All right, so let's talk about, is a quarter rep for the squat a bad thing? A context always matters regardless of what you're doing. So, for example, if I had an NBA athlete or I had someone playing sports, typically I would teach them the quarter squat. That's one reason I would teach the quarter squat. When you jump in the NBA game, you jump from here. You never jump from a full squat. Now, another way to use the quarter squat is if I'm having trouble with a lockout. Now, I would use a high box to squat onto so I could practice that squat and extend the hips and work on the quads and hips working together. So your quads are going to be working, your glutes are going to be working. There's no such thing as a good movement or bad movement. So the quarter squat is not bad. Where it goes bad is for the average individual. And we're talking about the average individual. We're talking about mobility, stability within your squat. Now, the way for the average mobility, I would do it for the average individual is to do it for someone who is struggling with their lockout and working on that end. That's very rare. It's probably better to do it with chains, bands. Use your strength curve that way. Now, for the average individual, you should be able to squat all the way down and then all the way up. And you should be able to hold the squat at the very bottom. Now, there's three components to a squat that people don't realize. Everybody thinks about the hips, but your thoracic spine mobility and shoulder mobility plays a huge role, and your ankle mobility. In another YouTube video, I did talk about that. So there's nothing wrong with a quarter squat, but context always matters. Now, we're talking about parallel. Let's talk about a parallel squat. Well, in football, I would use a parallel squat a lot of times because a lot of times when you tackle, you're not going all the way to the ground to tackle. You may go halfway down. That way we could get explosion into that parallel squat. So when we're talking about good versus bad in a squat, remember context always matters regardless on what you do. Make sure if you're an average individual, you're getting a full length squat. Now, if you're using the other squat, the half squat or the quarter rep, that you're using it for a reason. Now, if you're an athlete, the quarter rep may come in handy, especially if you're in basketball. You jump from that level. You want to be strongest at that level. And a half squat, like football, when you tackle, you may go down to almost a halfway point or parallel. That's when it's going to be beneficial. So anytime we do a movement, no such thing as good or bad movement. Context matters. And until next time, make sure we subscribe, like the page. If you have any questions, please hit me up, DM me on my Instagram, Facebook, message me on here, or make a comment. I appreciate it.